Sophia Adler was the kind of woman whose name inspired admiration and envy in equal measure. A towering figure in the world of tech innovation, she was the CEO of Nexus Dynamics, a multi-billion-dollar corporation reshaping artificial intelligence. Sophia thrived on precision, every detail in her life meticulously planned, every move strategically calculated. At 38, she had a penthouse overlooking Manhattan, a husband who was the picture of charm, and a close-knit circle of confidants who had stood by her through her meteoric rise. But perfection, as she would soon discover, can be a fragile facade. It began on an unassuming Thursday evening. The event was one of those lavish yet intimate affairs considered the top party at the center of the party. A corporate dinner hosted in her honor to celebrate the successful launch of Nexus's newest AI product. Sophia, draped in a sleek emerald gown that mirrored her piercing green eyes, was at the center of attention. Her husband, Nathan, a former architect turned art consultant, stood by her side, a supportive smile on his face. Their closest friends, including her longtime business partner, Evan Cole, filled the room, exchanging laughter and toasts to her success. The evening unfolded smoothly, too smoothly. It wasn't until a peculiar moment during Nathan's toast that Sophia felt the first tremor of unease. His words, though eloquent, struck her as oddly rehearsed. He thanked her for her brilliance and resilience but avoided looking her in the eye. The applause that followed rang hollow in her ears, a strange sensation for someone accustomed to public adoration. Later, as the dinner wound down and the crowd dispersed, Sophia found herself standing alone by the expansive floor-to-ceiling windows. The glittering skyline offered no comfort as she replayed the events of the evening in her mind. Something was off, an intangible tension she couldn't quite name. Nathan had been unusually attentive, his touch lingering longer than usual, his tone overly accommodating. Evan, too, had acted differently. Though they had worked side by side for over a decade, his laughter had felt forced, his usual wit subdued. Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft voice. "Sophia," Nathan said, handing her a glass of wine. His smile was warm, but she noticed a flicker of something in his eyes. Anxiety, perhaps? "Thank you," she replied, accepting the glass but not drinking. "You seemed distracted tonight." Nathan hesitated, then laughed lightly. "Just overwhelmed by your brilliance. You make the rest of us look bad." It was a compliment, but it landed wrong. His charm felt like a shield, a calculated attempt to deflect. Sophia nodded, deciding to let the matter rest, though the unease simmered. That night, as they returned to their penthouse, Sophia's restlessness grew. Nathan fell asleep quickly, his breathing steady and untroubled, but Sophia lay awake, staring at the darkened ceiling. Her mind, usually so sharp, felt clouded by doubts. What was it about his behavior that unsettled her? Was she imagining things? Or had the perfect balance of her world begun to tilt? The next morning, she threw herself into her routine, hoping the structure of her day would quiet her suspicions. Meetings, strategy sessions, and a working lunch with Evan filled her schedule. Yet even in the whirlwind of productivity, she couldn't shake the memory of Nathan's evasive eyes or Evan's strained demeanor. It was during that lunch with Evan that another thread of doubt emerged. As they reviewed projections for the next quarter, Evan's phone buzzed incessantly with messages. Normally unbothered by interruptions, he seemed unusually rattled, silencing the phone after each glance. "Everything okay?" Sophia asked, her tone casual but her gaze sharp. Evan offered a tight smile. "Just the usual chaos. You know how it is." She did know how it was, but Evan's discomfort didn't fit the picture. He was a man of unflappable composure, yet here he was, fidgeting under her scrutiny. Sophia decided to press no further, filing away the observation for later. That evening, she came home to find Nathan engrossed in what had become his favorite pastime, reading obscure novels he claimed to find in boutique bookstores. It was a hobby she had initially admired for its quirkiness, but tonight it irritated her. He didn't look up as she entered, his attention riveted on the worn paperback in his hands. "How was your day?" she asked, her voice slicing through the quiet. Nathan glanced up, his expression startled, as though he hadn't heard her come in. "Good, productive," he replied, setting the book down. "Yours?" "Eventful," Sophia said, her tone deliberately neutral. She studied his face, searching for signs of guilt or unease, but his features betrayed nothing. Later that night, Sophia sat in her study, her laptop open but untouched. A thought gnawed at her, persistent and unwelcome. The bookstore Nathan frequented wasn't far from her office. It was the perfect excuse to clear her mind, she decided. Tomorrow she would visit. She told herself it was just a whim, a harmless errand. But deep down, Sophia knew she was setting the first stone on a path she couldn't turn away from. The next afternoon, Sophia left her office earlier than usual, claiming she needed a break from back-to-back meetings. In truth, her curiosity had morphed into a gnawing determination. Her instincts, those same razor-sharp senses that had made her a titan in the tech industry, were now telling her to follow a thread that felt increasingly tangled. The bookstore Nathan often visited was tucked away on a quiet street, its unassuming facade at odds with its reputation for rare finds. As she stepped inside, the scent of aged paper and polished wood greeted her. It was a charming, intimate space, with shelves that stretched to the ceiling, crammed with volumes both pristine and worn. Sophia wandered through the aisles, her sharp eyes scanning the titles. She wasn't entirely sure what she was looking for, a clue, a pattern, perhaps even an absence that would make itself known. Several minutes passed before the shopkeeper, a middle-aged woman with an inviting smile, approached her. "Can I help you find something?" the woman asked. Sophia hesitated, then offered a polite smile. "Actually, my husband comes here often." "Nathan Adler? I was curious if there's anything he's been looking at recently." The woman's smile faltered for the briefest moment, but she recovered quickly. "Ah, yes, Nathan. He's quite the regular, always looking for something unique. He's been interested in historical fiction lately." "Interesting," Sophia replied smoothly, though a ripple of suspicion coursed through her. "Did he pick anything up recently?" The shopkeeper nodded, gesturing toward a small table near the register. "Just a few days ago, he seemed very excited about it." Sophia walked over to the table, her fingers brushing the spines of the displayed books. Nothing stood out to her as unusual, but the shopkeeper's subtle unease had been enough to deepen her doubts. Thanking the woman, she left the store, her mind buzzing with questions. As she stepped back onto the street, Sophia caught sight of a familiar figure in the distance. Nathan. He was walking briskly, a paper bag tucked under his arm, heading toward a nearby café. The sight stopped her in her tracks. Why hadn't he mentioned he'd be in the area? And what was in the bag? Keeping a careful distance, Sophia followed him. Her heart pounded as she trailed him to the café, a cozy spot with large windows and outdoor seating. Nathan entered and headed straight for a secluded corner booth. A few moments later, another figure joined him. A woman, strikingly elegant, with dark hair and a confident demeanor. Sophia's stomach twisted as she recognized her. Amelia Crawford. Amelia was one of Nexus's senior advisors, a sharp strategist who had worked closely with Sophia and Evan on several high-stakes deals. Nathan and Amelia exchanging pleasantries over coffee wasn't inherently suspicious, but the intimacy of their interaction was. Nathan leaned in, speaking in low tones, his expression animated. Amelia's laugh, soft and knowing, carried through the café like a whisper of betrayal. Sophia debated confronting them, but decided against it. Instead, she found a seat near the window where she could observe unnoticed. She watched as Nathan slid the paper bag across the table. Amelia opened it discreetly, revealing a stack of documents. Their conversation grew more intense, their expressions shifting from casual to serious. Every moment felt like a dagger twisting deeper into Sophia's chest. What could they possibly be discussing that required such secrecy? Her mind raced through possibilities, each one darker than the last. When Nathan and Amelia finally parted ways, Sophia remained seated, her hands clenched around her phone. She wanted answers, but she needed more evidence. This wasn't just about personal betrayal anymore. It had the potential to unravel everything she had built. Later that evening, Sophia returned home before Nathan, her composure a fragile mask. She poured herself a glass of wine and sat on the balcony, staring at the city lights. When Nathan arrived, his demeanor was as cheerful as ever. He kissed her on the cheek, asked about her day, and settled into his usual routine, as though nothing was amiss. "Did you go to the bookstore today?" she asked casually as they ate dinner. Nathan looked up, his expression unreadable for a split second before he nodded. "I did. Picked up something interesting. You'd love it." "Oh," Sophia pressed, her tone light but probing. "What's it about?" Nathan's smile faltered. Just for an instant. "Historical fiction." "You know how I am about stories with a rich backstory." Sophia nodded, feigning interest, but her mind catalogued his every word, every micro-expression. He was lying, she was sure of it. The Nathan she knew had never been particularly interested in history, let alone obscure novels about it. Over the next few days, Sophia's suspicions continued to grow. Her interactions with Nathan became a careful dance, each of them pretending nothing had changed, while the weight of unspoken truths pressed down on her. She began quietly investigating, combing through their shared accounts and schedules, looking for anomalies. Her findings were chilling. Bank statements revealed unusual withdrawals from their joint accounts, small amounts but frequent enough to raise a red flag. Calendar entries Nathan had mentioned attending didn't match with the actual events. And then there was Ilya. Further digging revealed late-night emails between Nathan and her, their contents veiled in professional jargon but carrying an undertone of something more. The final blow came when Sophia accessed Nexus's confidential server. Using her CEO-level clearance, she discovered discrepancies in the financial records of a recent project. Funds had been funneled into a shell company she didn't recognize. A deeper dive revealed the names tied to the account: Nathan Adler and Amelia Crawford. Sophia's chest tightened as the truth came into focus. Nathan and Amelia were siphoning money from Nexus, leveraging insider information to profit behind her back. It wasn't just personal betrayal. It was a calculated attack on her professional empire. As the realization sank in, Sophia's heartbreak gave way to fury. She had worked tirelessly to build Nexus, sacrificing countless personal moments, pouring every ounce of herself into its success. And now, the two people she had trusted most were tearing it apart for their own gain. But Sophia Adler was not a woman who broke under pressure. Betrayal might have splintered her heart, but it had sharpened her resolve. The next step required careful planning. She began documenting everything: screenshots, emails, bank transactions. She contacted a trusted legal advisor, someone outside Nexus who could help her navigate the storm ahead. And all the while, she played the part of the unsuspecting wife and colleague, biding her time until she could strike. Every moment of feigned normalcy was a test of her will. Sophia dined with Nathan, laughed at his stories, and even kissed him goodnight, all while plotting his downfall. Her nights were spent strategizing, her analytical mind working overtime to outmaneuver those who had dared to betray her. The tension between her roles, loving wife and vengeful strategist, was almost unbearable. But Sophia knew that revenge, like success, required patience, and when the time came, she would ensure that Nathan and Amelia paid for every lie, every stolen dollar, and every moment of humiliation they had inflicted upon her. Unbeknownst to them, the cracks in her perfect life had not weakened her, they had revealed the steel beneath. Sophia knew that the best strategies were not rushed but crafted with precision. Betrayal had ignited a fire within her, but she refused to let emotion cloud her judgment. If Nathan and Amelia had underestimated her, they would soon learn the cost of their folly. The days that followed were a masterclass in quiet manipulation and subtle inquiry, as Sophia worked to dismantle their schemes from the inside out. Her first move was to gather allies, though she did so without revealing her hand entirely. Sophia reached out to Evan Cole, her longtime business partner and one of the few people she still trusted. at least for the moment. Over lunch, at a discreet restaurant far from the Nexus offices, she broached the subject delicately. "Evan, have you noticed anything off lately?" Sophia asked, her tone casual but her gaze unwavering. Evan raised an eyebrow. "Off? How do you mean?" "Just some irregularities," she replied, swirling her glass of water. "Financial reports that don't quite add up, projects that seem to stall without explanation." Evan leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. "I can't say I've noticed anything specific, but I've had a feeling that something's not quite right." "Why? What's going on?" Sophia hesitated, weighing her words carefully. She needed Evan's cooperation, but couldn't risk tipping off Nathan or Amelia prematurely. "Let's just say I'm looking into a few things. If you hear or see anything unusual, let me know." Evan nodded, his concern evident. "Of course. If there's trouble brewing, you can count on me." The conversation left Sophia both relieved and wary. Evan's response seemed genuine, but she couldn't afford to fully trust anyone. Trust, she realized, was a luxury she could no longer afford. That evening, Sophia took her investigation a step further. Using her administrative access to Nexus's internal systems, she began tracing the flow of funds through the shell company tied to Nathan and Amelia. The deeper she dug, the more damning the evidence became. Transfers were masked as consulting fees, routed through multiple accounts to obscure their origin. It was a labyrinthine trail, but Sophia's analytical mind thrived on the challenge. The most incriminating discovery came in the form of a contract, one that bore both Nathan's and Amelia's signatures. It was an agreement to sell Nexus's proprietary AI algorithms to a rival company, a move that would cripple Sophia's empire and enrich her betrayers. The audacity of their plan left her breathless, but it also solidified her resolve. This wasn't just about money or betrayal. It was an attack on everything she'd built. Nathan and Amelia weren't just stealing from her, they were attempting to dismantle her legacy. Sophia's next target was Amelia. Confronting her directly would be premature, but Sophia needed to understand her motives. She arranged for a meeting under the guise of discussing Nexus's future strategy. The meeting was held in Sophia's private office, a space designed to intimidate with its sweeping views and minimalist decor. Amelia arrived promptly, her demeanor polished and professional. "Sophia, it's always a pleasure to catch up. What's on your mind?" Sophia smiled, gesturing for Amelia to sit. "I've been thinking about the direction we're taking with Nexus. It's critical that we stay ahead of the competition." Amelia nodded, her expression attentive but guarded. "Absolutely. I've been working on a few proposals that could position us as market leaders for the next decade." "Proposals?" Sophia echoed, her tone light but her eyes sharp. "I'd love to see them." Amelia hesitated for a fraction of a second before responding. "Of course, I'll have them sent over." "Niha." Sophia leaned forward slightly, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial tone. "You know, Amelia, I've always admired your ambition. You remind me a lot of myself when I was younger." Amelia's lips curved into a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "That's quite the compliment." "It is," Sophia agreed, her gaze unflinching. "And it's why I hope we can always be honest with each other. Transparency is the foundation of any successful partnership. Wouldn't you agree?" Amelia's smile faltered, just for a moment. "Of course." The exchange was brief but telling. Sophia had planted a seed of doubt in Amelia's mind, a subtle reminder that she was watching. It wasn't much, but it was enough to keep Amelia on edge. Back at home, Sophia began setting the stage for Nathan's downfall. She initiated a surveillance program, using Nexus's cutting-edge technology to monitor his phone and email communications. What she found confirmed her worst fears. Nathan's correspondence with Amelia was laced with coded language and references to their scheme. There were also personal messages, ones that revealed an intimacy Sophia had hoped wasn't real. Reading Nathan's words to Amelia was like swallowing shards of glass. He described Amelia as his partner in every sense, praising her intelligence and passion. He spoke of a future they were building together, one that excluded Sophia entirely. But amidst the pain, Sophia found clarity. Nathan and Amelia had already written her out of the story. Now, it was her turn to rewrite the ending. Sophia's revenge began quietly, with the precision of a chess master plotting her moves several steps ahead. She shared the financial discrepancies with her legal advisor, initiating an internal audit at Nexus under the pretense of routine compliance. The audit would expose the shell company and its fraudulent transactions, implicating both Nathan and Amelia. Simultaneously, Sophia began building her public narrative. She commissioned a series of interviews and press releases highlighting Nexus's innovations and her leadership. By the time the audit findings were made public, Sophia's reputation would be untouchable. Her final move was the most calculated. Using the evidence she had gathered, she orchestrated a board meeting, presenting the findings to Nexus's stakeholders. The meeting, held in the company's sleek conference room, was a spectacle of controlled drama. Nathan and Amelia were present, their expressions shifting from confidence to panic as Sophia laid out the evidence. She spoke with the calm authority of a prosecutor delivering a closing argument, her words slicing through their defenses like a scalpel. When she finished, the room was silent. The board members, many of whom had been loyal to Sophia for years, looked to her for guidance. Effective immediately, expertly assembled, TrackMe reported to radio. Effective immediately, expertly assembled, expertly TrackMe reported to radio. Effective immediately, expertly discovered, legal action will follow. Nathan tried to protest, but Sophia silenced him with a glare. Don't make this worse for yourself, Nathan. You've already done enough. As security escorted Nathan and Amelia from the building, Sophia felt a surge of triumph. They had tried to destroy her, but they had underestimated her resilience. Still, as she watched them leave, a shadow lingered in her mind. She had won this battle, but the war was far from over. Betrayal had taught her a harsh lesson. Trust was a weakness, and vigilance was her only shield. For Sophia Adler, the fight for control had just begun. Sophia Adler stood in her penthouse, staring out at the glittering Manhattan skyline. The board meeting had gone exactly as she planned. Nathan and Amelia were exposed, their schemes laid bare, and their smug confidence shattered. But Sophia didn't feel the triumph she'd expected. Instead, a cold resolve filled her, a certainty that the battle was not over. The next steps would define whether she emerged not just as a survivor, but as the victor. The morning after the board meeting, Sophia's phone buzzed incessantly with calls and messages. The fallout from the scandal was making waves. News outlets had picked up the story, framing it as the betrayal of a tech titan by those closest to her. Pundits speculated on the implications for Nexus dynamics, investors demanded answers, and the public devoured every detail of the drama. Sophia didn't shy away from the spotlight. She understood the power of controlling the narrative. Donning a tailored black suit that exuded authority, she scheduled a press conference to address the situation directly. The room was packed with journalists, their cameras clicking incessantly as she stepped to the podium. "Good morning," she began, her voice steady and commanding. "Over the past few days, troubling revelations have come to light regarding the actions of individuals who I trusted implicitly, both personally and professionally. Let me be clear, these actions do not reflect the values of Nexus Dynamics or myself as its leader." She paused, letting her words sink in. "To our investors, employees, and partners, I assure you that every necessary measure is being taken to protect this company's integrity and future. This betrayal is not the end of our story. It is a reminder of why resilience and vigilance are essential in both business and life." The questions that followed were relentless, probing the depth of the scandal and her personal feelings. Sophia handled them with a balance of candor and professionalism, refusing to let her emotions show. As she left the room, she could feel the tide beginning to turn. The narrative was no longer about her as a victim, it was about her as a leader who had weathered the storm. Behind the scenes, Sophia intensified her efforts to repair the damage Nathan and Amelia had inflicted. The internal audit revealed the extent of their embezzlement, and her legal team swiftly moved to freeze their accounts and recover the stolen funds. Lawsuits were filed and subpoenas issued, ensuring that the justice system would hold them accountable. Sophia also turned her attention to the shell company they had used to launder the money. She tracked down its paper trail, uncovering a network of other collaborators. Some were minor players willing to cooperate in exchange for leniency, but a few were powerful individuals who had knowingly facilitated the fraud. The revelations expanded the scope of the scandal, but they also gave Sophia leverage. Every piece of evidence she uncovered became another weapon in her arsenal. One night, as she reviewed documents in her study, a name caught her attention. Evan Cole. A transaction from the shell company had been flagged, linking him to a dubious consultancy fee. Sophia's breath caught. Could it be possible that Evan, too, had betrayed her? The thought chilled her. Evan had been her closest ally, the one person she believed she could still trust. But the evidence was undeniable. If he was involved, she needed to know why. Sophia arranged a private meeting with Evan, choosing a quiet restaurant where they wouldn't be overheard. When he arrived, she studied him carefully, searching for any signs of guilt. "Sophia, what's this about?" Evan asked, his tone genuinely curious. She slid a folder across the table, her expression unreadable. "I need you to explain this." Evan opened the folder and scanned the documents. His face paled as he realized what he was looking at. "Sophia, I can explain." "Then start," she said, her voice icy. Evan sighed, leaning back in his chair. "I had no idea what Nathan and Amelia were planning. I swear to you I wasn't part of their scheme. They approached me months ago asking me to help route a few transactions. They said it was for a project you were keeping under wraps, something about avoiding scrutiny from the board. I should have questioned it, but I didn't. I trusted them because you trusted them." Sophia's eyes narrowed. "You're telling me you didn't know you were helping them siphon money from Nexus?" "I didn't," Evan insisted. "But when I started piecing things together, I confronted Nathan. He told me it was too late to back out, that if I tried to expose them, they'd drag me down with them. So I kept quiet, hoping it would blow over." Sophia studied him for a long moment, weighing his words. Evan looked genuinely contrite, but trust was a fragile thing now. "Do you have proof of this conversation with Nathan?" "I recorded it," Evan admitted. "I thought I might need it as leverage if things went south." Sophia's lips curved into a grim smile. "Then you'd better hand it over." With Evan's recording in her possession, Sophia tightened her grip on the situation. The recording was damning, revealing not only Nathan's threats but also details of the scheme that hadn't been uncovered yet. It was the final piece she needed to ensure that Nathan and Amelia couldn't wriggle out of the consequences. But Sophia wasn't content with merely exposing their crimes. She wanted to ensure they felt the full weight of her wrath. Using her connections in the media, she orchestrated a series of leaks that painted Nathan and Amelia as conniving opportunists. Articles detailed their betrayal in excruciating detail, their faces splashed across headlines as symbols of greed and deceit. At the same time, she worked to rebuild Nexus's reputation. She announced a new initiative to foster transparency and ethical practices within the company, a move that garnered widespread praise. Employees rallied behind her, inspired by her determination to turn the crisis into an opportunity for growth. Despite her public composure, Sophia couldn't entirely escape the emotional toll of the ordeal. Late at night, when the city was quiet and the weight of her loneliness pressed down on her, she found herself thinking about the life she had shared with Nathan. Their laughter, their plans for the future. It all felt like a cruel illusion now. But even in her moments of vulnerability, Sophia refused to let herself be consumed by bitterness. She had learned a hard lesson about trust, but she also understood that her strength lay in her ability to adapt and overcome. Nathan and Amelia had underestimated her because they had mistaken her kindness for weakness. Now they would see the steel, beneath the surface. The final blow came during a courtroom showdown. Sophia sat in the gallery as Nathan and Amelia faced charges of embezzlement, fraud, and breach of fiduciary duty. Their once confident demeanor was gone, replaced by a mixture of fear and defeat. As the prosecution laid out the evidence, including Evan's recording, it was clear there was no escape. When the verdict came, guilty on all counts, Sophia felt a sense of closure. Justice had been served, and her empire was safe once more. But as she left the courtroom, a lingering thought remained. Betrayal had forced her to confront the fragility of her world, and while she had emerged victorious, the scars would remain. She had reclaimed her throne, but the cost had been steep. Sophia Adler was no longer the same woman she had been before. She was sharper, tougher, and more determined than ever. The world would think twice before crossing her again. The courtroom verdict marked a turning point, but for Sophia Adler, the end of the trial was not the end of the journey. Victory had come at a price paid in trust, in emotional resilience, and in the knowledge that the people she loved most had betrayed her in ways she couldn't have imagined. Now, with the storm behind her, she stood on the edge of an uncertain future, determined to rebuild the shattered pieces of her life on her own terms. In the weeks following the trial, Sophia returned to her work with renewed intensity. Nexus Dynamics was still recovering from the fallout of the scandal, and she was determined to ensure the company emerged stronger than ever. She overhauled internal systems, introducing layers of transparency and accountability that would prevent future betrayals. Each decision was a step toward restoring not only Nexus's reputation, but also her own faith in the empire she had built. She also sought to mend relationships within the company. The betrayal had left many employees shaken, their loyalty tested by the revelation that leaders they admired had acted out of greed. Sophia held town hall meetings where she spoke openly about the ordeal, addressing concerns and answering questions with honesty. Her vulnerability during these sessions inspired a sense of unity among her team. Slowly, trust began to rebuild, not only in her leadership, but also in the vision of Nexus itself. Yet, despite her public triumph, the personal toll weighed heavily on her. Nights were the hardest, the silence of her penthouse amplifying the echoes of memories she couldn't quite silence. She had shared a life with Nathan, trusted him with her dreams and vulnerabilities. The void he left was not easily filled, even though she knew he had never truly deserved her trust. Sophia turned to her closest confidant, her sister Emma, for solace. Over glasses of wine in Emma's Brooklyn brownstone, Sophia allowed herself to speak about the pain she had kept hidden. "I keep asking myself how I didn't see it," Sophia confessed, her voice tinged with both anger and sadness. "How could I have been so blind?" Emma placed a hand on hers, her gaze steady. "Because you believed in him, Sophia. You believed in them both. That's not a weakness, it's humanity." Sophia let the words settle, feeling a flicker of comfort. She had spent so long blaming herself for missing the signs, for trusting too easily. But perhaps Emma was right. The fault lay not in her belief, but in their betrayal of it. As months passed, Sophia began to find strength in the aftermath of her ordeal. She threw herself into new projects, leading Nexus into uncharted territories of innovation. Her ambition, once driven by a desire to prove herself, was now fueled by a deeper purpose, to create something enduring, something untainted by the shadows of betrayal. One such project was an initiative to mentor young entrepreneurs, offering them the guidance she wished she had received when she was starting out. Sophia hosted workshops and seminars, sharing the lessons she had learned, not just about business, but about resilience and integrity. Her experiences resonated with others, and she found unexpected healing in helping others navigate their own challenges. But the specter of Nathan and Amelia lingered. Their sentencing had been swift and harsh, with both receiving substantial prison terms for their crimes. Yet, Sophia couldn't shake the feeling that the chapter wasn't fully closed. The damage they had inflicted went beyond financial theft. It had left scars on her soul, scars that wouldn't fade overnight. One evening, she received a letter from Nathan. The envelope, bearing the address of the correctional facility where he was incarcerated, sat on her desk for days before she finally summoned the courage to open it. The letter was long, filled with apologies and justifications. Nathan wrote of regret, of how he had been blinded by greed and manipulated by Ilya. He begged for forgiveness, claiming that he had never stopped loving her, even as he betrayed her. Sophia read the letter twice, her emotions roiling. Part of her wanted to believe him, to find some semblance of closure in his words, but another part, the part hardened by his actions, saw through the veneer of remorse. Nathan's words, no matter how heartfelt, could not undo what he had done. Forgiveness, she realized, was not something she owed him. It was something she owed herself, in her own time and on her own terms. She placed the letter in a drawer, deciding not to respond. Some wounds needed no words, only distance. As the anniversary of the scandal approached, Sophia found herself reflecting on how far she had come. The betrayal that had once threatened to destroy her had instead forged her into someone stronger, someone more self-aware. She no longer saw vulnerability as a weakness, but as a part of her humanity, something to be guarded but not erased. On a crisp autumn evening, she hosted a gala for Nexus Dynamics, celebrating the company's achievements and its resilience. The event was held at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, its grand halls filled with clients, employees, and friends. Sophia, radiant in a sapphire gown, delivered a speech that echoed with conviction. "This past year has taught me that even in the darkest moments, there is strength to be found," she said, her voice carrying through the room. "Betrayal may have shaken us, but it did not break us. And from that we have emerged not only stronger, but more united." The applause was thunderous, but it was the quiet moments after the gala that stayed with her. Standing on the museum steps, gazing at the city that had been both her battlefield and her home, Sophia felt a rare sense of peace. She had reclaimed her throne, not through vengeance, but through perseverance. The shadows of betrayal would always be a part of her story, but they no longer defined her. Sophia Adler was more than a victim, more than a survivor. She was a woman who had faced the abyss and emerged with her head held high, ready to write the next chapter of her life.